I'm Chris Martin, Dean of the College of Business, and I want to thank you for joining us for the 17th Annual Marbury Lecture Series. So it's actually 18 years, but we had to skip a year because of the pandemic. So this is the 17th annual of the series, and it honors the late William Artis Marbury Jr. and Virginia Lomax Marbury, outstanding individuals, alums of the College of Business who believed that you can achieve business success while maintaining high ethical standards. The lecture was established by their children to honor their parents' memory and their significant contribution to the business world. And we have a couple of the members of that family at the back. Give a big wave back there. Thank you all for supporting us over the years. As ethical leadership is the foundation of what we teach at Louisiana Tech and our actions at Louisiana Tech, the Marbury Ethics Lecture is an invaluable annual event for our students and for our community to discuss ethical dilemmas we face in an evolving business environment. Today, we're turning our attention to a truly transformative technology and a game changer in the workplace. It's even a game changer for you as students, and that is generative AI. Our very own Craig Van Slyke, Dr. Van Slyke, is the McAllister Chairholder in Computer Information System, and he's led the way in this topic, particularly as it relates to academic situations, the classroom situation, but also in businesses across the world. Specifically, he'll be talking today on the ethics of human artificial intelligent co-production, so working hand in hand. Craig's published over 60 articles, including a forthcoming article in Organizational Dynamics that explores the ethical issues related to the use of generative AI and human resource management. The 5th edition of his 4th textbook, Information Systems and Business, which you probably are using in the class, right, Craig? Is it an experiential approach will be published this year. He produces the AI Goes to College newsletter and the podcast, as well as the Cyberway podcast that sponsors the College of Business. Before coming to Louisiana Tech in 2018, he was a professor and dean at the W.A. Frank College of Business in Northern Arizona University, and we are lucky to have him here. And it's my pleasure now to welcome Dr. Craig Van Slyke.
Thank you for that fine introduction. My wife says I don't need an ego boost, so
You got one?
sure. Yes, I know. She said I won't need it. I'm an old man. Can you see this beard? This is not the beard of a young man. Generative AI is quite possibly the most exciting technological development I've seen in my lifetime. The only thing that comes close is the internet. Any of you use the internet? Yeah. So when I started my career, I had a guy that I used to work with come and talk to my class, and he said, you need to watch this World Wide Web thing, because I think it's going to be big. It was in 1994. And it changed the world. So in November of 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT, and the world will never be the same. And that's not an exaggeration. That's just the way it is. And so I'm really happy today to be able to talk to you about some of the ethical issues related to generative AI, because they're huge. They're huge. We face some decisions as a society, and I'll get into those here in a little bit. So what is generative AI? Now, if you need to take notes on this, go ahead, because this is a highly technical definition. It's artificial intelligence that creates stuff. That's it. That's all it is. It's going to be in my way. It just creates stuff. Artificial intelligence has been around since the 50s, but not in this way, not in the way that creates the kind of things that we can create now with AI, and not with the degree of flexibility that we have. So AI can create almost anything you can imagine. How many of you have seen Sora, S-O-R-A? It is phenomenal. I mean, it is hard to believe. There's one of the example videos they have, this is from OpenAI, shows mastodons walking through the snow, and you would swear that somebody had a time machine, went back in time, and filmed these mastodons walking in the snow. And that's just a taste of what's coming, just a taste. So it can create all kinds of images. Any of you play around with Dolly or Midjourney or any of those things? It's pretty interesting what you can produce. Any kind of image, diagrams. I use it to create diagrams. Audio is one of the most fun things for me. Have you heard of Suno? S-U-N-O? So Suno, you can just create music. We lost one of our dogs, 17-year-old dog, Maggie. And so I went into Suno and in about 5 minutes created this very touching, I'm not going to play it. If I did, you know, I'd be a mess up here. In about 5 minutes, created this song that sounds like somebody professional had written it, sung it, played the instrumentation behind it, all of that. You know what a deep fake is? So now you can clone your voice. There's a system I pay $5 a month for, $5 a month, that will let me clone virtually any voice, including my own. And if you're not paying attention, you can't tell it's not me or whoever's being cloned. There's sound effects generators, and just goes on and on and on. And then the thing that we're most familiar with is text. You know, that's what we do a lot of times with ChatGPT. When, not you all, but some of your colleagues say, I need a 200-word essay on this, that's what they're doing, right? Don't do that. It's a bad idea. It can help you create ideas. I get it to help me figure out how to explain things in simple language. That's not easy for somebody that's a college professor, right? How can I put this in terms that, that reasonable people can understand? And it just goes on and on and on. And whatever somebody is saying it can't do today, it'll do in the future. Just trust me. When I got started in all of this, oh, computers will never beat a grandmaster at chess. They'll never translate language reliably. Anybody use Google Translate? Yeah, and just whatever somebody says it's not going to do, it's going to do it. So how does all this work? It works on something called large language models. And large language models are kind of word prediction machines. And so the way they work is they might see the word dog. All right, they see a dog, and they're going to say, what's the most likely next word? And then maybe the most likely next word is play. And then it says, okay, toy. And then we've got a dog and we've got a toy. What's the next? I've already given it away. What's the next most likely word? Given those two, it might be play. And it goes on and on and on, and it's much, 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 much more complicated than that in reality, but that's kind of the way it works. And all of this word prediction machine produces magic. It really is magic. How many of you use ChatGPT or Claude or those kinds of things? Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal what it can do. Any guesses on what I did for the very first time I used it? No guesses? I'll have to back up. Whoops. I asked it to write a poem about this little cat, Taz. So I've got a cat named Taz. She's gray and white. She's really small. She's really cute. She's just one of those cats that everything she does is funny. 30 seconds later, I've got this pretty good little poem about this cat named Taz. And it just goes on from there. You know, I use this clicker like all the time. You'd think I'd know which one goes forward and which one goes backwards. So most of you in here are at an age when you ought to be thinking about what you're going to do with your lives. I hope you are. If you're not, you should be. That's right, you too especially. Especially this time of year. Generative AI is changing the way we work. It's just getting started. So this comes out of a Deloitte State of Generative AI in the Enterprise report that came out recently. 79% of the companies that they surveyed thought that generative AI would drive substantial transformation within the next few years. Now that's an interesting, 79% is pretty high. But when you couple it with this next statistic, 41% of those same organizations said they are underprepared with respect to generative AI knowledge, expertise. Guess what that creates for y'all? So we've got this big need, it's not being satisfied, that's where you want to step in. And a lot of companies are looking to you and people your age to help them figure all of this stuff out because old people can't figure this stuff out. Right? We can teach it, but we can't actually figure it out. So this is a huge opportunity for you. You've got a choice. You can either ride the wave of generative AI or you can get buried by it. Anybody ever been at the beach and got caught from behind by a wave and get rolled? That's what's happening. It's a lot better if you ride it. So I think one of the big future areas of generative AI is in something that we can call human AI co-production. What that means is AI just doesn't go off and do its own thing. And you don't just tell AI, do this for me. You work together. How many of you have team projects in your classes? How many of you hate team projects in your classes? Yeah. So Professor Lee raised his hand back there. Yeah, but that's the way I think of AI. I think of it as a very knowledgeable, infinitely patient collaborator. I got up at a little after 2 this morning. A little after 2. Normal getting up time is about 3:30. If I called up Dr. Stafford at 3:30 and said, hey, Dr. Stafford, I'm trying to figure out this idea. Can you help me think through it? What do you think he's going to do? Yeah, I mean, he would, yeah. He'd be sorry he ever helped me get this job, is what he'd be doing. If I did it to Dr. Ellis, I'd have 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock classes 5 days a week for the rest of my career here, because he gets to decide that sort of thing. ChatGPT never complains. Never once has it said, what are you, an idiot? How can you think like this? Never once. So this idea of doing things with AI is really the way to think about it. How can I use AI to help me create things that I couldn't create without AI? Guess what created that image? DALL-E, right? You're going to see several of those. So all of this is really interesting, and it's really good, and it's coming. But there are a bunch of ethical issues that we need to figure out if this is all going to go well. And that's really the focus of what I want to talk to you about today. So I'm going to run through a number of ethical issues. I could probably do an entire lecture on any one of these. So if you feel like I'm not covering all of it, it's because I'm not. The first one, and maybe one of the most important problems that we have, or potential problems we have with AI, is bias. So earlier, I said that we have these large language models that serve as the foundation for all of these chatbots that we use. Well, they're trained on what's called a corpus of data. Trillions of words. And we call it a corpus because we can't just say a bunch of data. We have to have a fancy term for it, so we call it a corpus. Well, do you think there's any bias in the world? Of course there's bias in the world. So that bias gets reflected in the data that these large language models are trained on. And so that means that if you ask, you sit down, if you're a young female, maybe you're in high school, trying to think about what you want to do in college, and you say, hey, can you help me, ChatGPT, help me decide what I want to do in college? And it says, well, tell me about yourself. Well, you know, I'm 17 years old, and I'm in high school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I like science. It might say, oh, you should go into nursing. Because the historical data says that people that fit that profile go into nursing. And there's nothing wrong with nursing. My wife is a nurse, right? It's really handy to have a nurse around sometimes. But is that really a good thing? If a guy sits down and says the same thing, it says, oh, you should be a doctor, or you should go into engineering. I really like teaching people. Oh, you should be a kindergarten teacher, or you should be a college professor, or a math teacher. That's a problem. That's a problem, especially when we start turning over some decisions to these AI tools. So biased underlying data means that we have biased output unless we do something about it. But at the same time, generative AI has the potential to reduce the effects of bias. These models can be trained to say, wait a second, you know, we've got this problem where traditionally this group has been disadvantaged, and, you know, I'm going to try to help people develop ways to overcome some of those disadvantages. So here's another big one, equity of access. We are not, I don't know if you knew this or not, Louisiana is not the richest state in the country. You don't believe that? Just look at the budget that we're going to have, you know, coming up. That means that maybe some of the people that live in Louisiana aren't going to have the same kind of access to tools that people in other parts of the country have. Or I live kind of right near the line between Jackson and Ouachita Parish. A lot of single wides where I live, not double wides, a lot of single wides. Not the richest area in the world. Are they going to be able to afford the $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus? Or that you don't want to know what I spend every month on AI tools. I'm not telling my wife it's that much. I'm not going to tell her how much I'm paying. That's going to be a huge problem. But if we solve that, we can use AI to help lift up some of the people that are in these less advantaged areas. So it has a potential. Along the same lines, there's a significant potential for problems with equity of benefits and risks. This is a little bit harder to explain. So AI is going to change the world. I've already made that claim. There's the possibility that if we don't do this right, AI is going to change the world where people that maybe already have some advantages benefit the most from AI, and people that are already at risk suffer the most from AI. So let me give you an example. If you're in a poor area, maybe it doesn't have the greatest, best resourced, most resourced schools, maybe you don't have the opportunity to do as much with AI. You probably don't have the opportunity to do as much with other technologies, might not have some of the training programs that you might need to kind of elevate your status, elevate your possibilities for the future. And so what can happen is AI can make all of that worse. It can make all of that worse, but it also can make all of that better if we do it right. I know we have some teachers here, right? Teachers? Okay, we've got at least one teacher here. Do you ever feel like you have enough resources? I lasted 1 year as a high school math teacher. It's like, nope, I'm not doing that again. It's a tough, tough job. Well, AI can really help with a lot of that if it's done well. But if it only goes to the rich schools, we're not going to make things better, we're going to make things worse. Accountability and transparency. This is Gordy. This is my goat. Goats make everything you do more interesting. This is him helping me put alfalfa in the barn. Have you ever pushed a wheelbarrow with two goats headbutting in the wheelbarrow? It's interesting. So I don't know why I put the picture of Gordy here. I just wanted to put a picture of Gordy up there. So one of the really interesting things about AI, human AI co-production, is if something goes wrong, who's responsible? You know, if I use AI to produce a test, I don't do that, by the way. He's in my class. He sits in the same spot. He was sitting here at 8 o'clock this morning, and here he is again at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I think he deserves a round of applause. We need to give him another thing. He's the only one of my students I see here. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Is that your seat? Oh, that's, well, you know, you can't expect me. Yeah, there you go. So I was talking about something. What was I talking? No, just kidding. Accountability, Gordy. Let's talk, just forget about the AI. Let's just talk about Gordy. Who's responsible for that? How do we figure out who's accountable when AI and humans are working together to produce certain things, to make certain decisions? And what makes that all trickier is that there's very little transparency with generative AI. Do you know who knows exactly how ChatGPT comes up with an answer when you're halfway through a conversation? Anybody know? How many people? Nobody. These models adapt and learn, and they're so complex, even the people that built them can't tell you exactly what they're doing. That's how you end up with a female pope. Do you know about that? So Gemini, Google's AI model, had to very quickly take its image generation capability down because it produced a female pope. Now, my guess is that some knucklehead said, show me a picture of the pope as a female, as a woman. So I'm not so sure that it was all that automatic, but this kind of thing happens all the time. And even the people, did that just do a little flashy thing? Okay, good, so I'm okay. Even the people that build these things can't anticipate all of the potential problems that it might have. So that can be a huge deal. What I think is one of the biggest opportunities and the biggest danger areas, really two of them that kind of go together, are the next two slides I'm going to show you. The first one is the effect of AI on human autonomy and agency. These two things are really closely tied together. Autonomy is your ability to make decisions without undue influence. Agency is your ability to act on those decisions to do something that you want to do. Okay, let me see if I can help you understand why this is a problem. How many of you have used Google? AI has reduced your autonomy. AI has reduced your autonomy. Who do you think figures out what to show you as the top result? It's some AI model. Anybody ever buy anything from Amazon? You know all those suggestions down at the bottom? Hey, you should buy this one instead. AI decided what to show you. And that has reduced your autonomy and to some extent reduced your agency. Now the good news is that if we do this right, we can actually increase autonomy and agency. We can make it easier for us to make the kinds of decisions we want to make without being influenced. We can also make it so we can accomplish the things we want to accomplish with AI, but it can go either way. And then this all leads to the big payoff. And this is ultimately the big question. Is AI going to increase or decrease human dignity and fulfillment? Is it going to help us live better lives, or is it going to keep us from living good lives? This is the ultimate question. And like I said, this is the big payoff. Do you know who these people are? You recognize any of them? No, you don't recognize. It's just some random art, up there. That was supposed to be a joke. You want to hear another joke? What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? Don't say it. A stick. There you go. This one, I've already given this one away. What's brown and sticky? A stick. This is what they have to put up with at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know where I got some of those dad jokes? ChatGPT, right? You have to be careful though, because they recycle. So you have to be, prompting is really important here. And one of the big things that's going to determine how this all goes is how well we can align values across different groups. So I'm showing a simplified diagram here, 4 different groups: the user, the AI agent itself, the developers of the AI, and society. And if we have society wanting one thing, and the developers of AI want another thing, and then AI can kind of go off and do its own thing, and then users want something entirely different, we've got problems. And so if any two of these are out of alignment, we've got problems. I mentioned deepfakes earlier. We've already had at least one example I know of supposedly President Biden making phone calls when it wasn't President Biden. And I'm sure it's going to happen on both sides of the aisle, and I'm sure it's going to get pretty crazy before it's all said and done. Well, that's a user that wants to do one thing, but that's contrary to the values of society. Do you know what the term nerfed means? Have you heard that term? So when they put restrictions on these AI agents, these generative AI agents, People in the community tend to get a little ticked off because they can't do the things they used to do with it. They call that nerfing it. So you may want to do something that's perfectly legitimate, perfectly in alignment with what the developers originally intended and with what society might want to do, but the AI agent has somehow decided that's a bad idea. It's nerfed itself, and so it doesn't do it. And so we could just go on and on and on with different scenarios here. And making all of this worse is that we don't have one society. We've got lots of societies that often have different values. We've got billions of users, many of whom have different values. There are thousands of agents and thousands of developers out there, tens of thousands, that all may have slightly different values. So this is a recipe for a mess, and we're going to have to navigate that if we're going to be successful. Okay, so the big idea here is that we as a society are at a crossroads. We've got a lot of decisions to make. We've got a lot of work to do. So I'm going to paint two different scenarios of the future, and they're extremes. They're extreme at both ends of the scale. The first is the dark side. That's another image that was AI created. You know how you can tell? You probably can't see this. DALL-E is really bad at words. So none of those things that look like words are actually words. They're just complete nonsense. All right, so here's the dark side. And I'm going to kind of read this. You're going to be working at the direction of AI. AI is going to tell you what to do, and it's going to make you do it. You're going to have no autonomy. You don't get to make decisions. You're not going to be able to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. You're just going to be doing this drudgery work. I mean, imagine some dystopian film where the workers are all trudging along at the end of the day, and then, you know, they do their work and they go home, and the next day they trudge back to work and do the same boring, unfulfilling stuff. That's a very real possibility. You know what drudgery is for faculty? Grading. We hate grading. We do it because we love you, but we hate grading. Or because we hate ourselves, I don't know, it's one of the two. But basically, humanity becomes a bunch of drones. We're just doing what we're told to do. We've got all these little AI micromanagement agents that are saying, your bathroom break was 16 minutes and you were supposed to be back at 15 minutes. Why were you away from your computer for 16 minutes? You haven't moved your mouse in 8 seconds. What's going on? Or, you're supposed to be making 10 of these steps every minute and you're only making 7. You think that's not possible? Anybody that works from home knows that some of that is possible right now. Right? This is a very, very real possibility. And making things worse, the way this is all set up is bias and inequity are increased. So now we've got even more disparity in society. And making things worse, we've eliminated a lot of our ability for people to move upward, to increase their capabilities. And so that's all very, very bad. This is a real possibility. This is not some sci-fi nonsense. I am not that creative. This is something that can actually happen. Trust me on this. This could actually happen. But it doesn't have to happen. We're not doomed to have that future. There's also the possibility for a bright side. And this is what I think we all want to happen. So in the bright side, humans move what I call up the stack. And that's a geek developer term. That means you're moving away from the ones and zeros of the computer and moving further and further up to the actual work and the fun stuff. Okay? We have the ability to use generative AI to move humans up the stack. So professors don't have to spend as much time grading. We can spend more time figuring out how to teach you exciting stuff. All right? People that are writers don't have to spend as much time checking their grammar. They can focus on making the writing really, really good. And we could go on and on and on and on. And so because we're moving up the stack, we're doing things that we find exciting and fulfilling. And let me tell you, the dad moment, all right? If you have a job where you hate Fridays and you look forward to Mondays, you've got a really good life. That's when I realized I'd made the right decision to be a college professor, because I would literally mean, oh, I'm not going to be in school until Monday. That's terrible. That's terrible. So if you can move up the stack through the use of AI, you're going to do these things that make you really excited about what you do. If you can find a job where you love what you do, you are going to have a good life, even if you don't make a ton of money. It's not going to matter, because you're going to be happy with your work. If it goes the other way, have you ever known somebody that's stuck in a job they hate? It's one of the saddest things in the world. But AI has the possibility, the potential, to move us up the stack so we get to do what we find rewarding and fulfilling. And I'm really, when I was thinking through all of this, that phrase, and I'm terrible about pointing back there, that phrase, there's a monitor back there, did you know that? So my poor students, I've got my little pointer, I'm saying, if you look right here, you can see it. Very ineffective. John Kennedy said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I don't think he was the first one to say it, but he made the saying popular. And I think this is the possible future we have, that a rising tide makes everybody better eventually. It's going to take a while to get there. But this is, like the dark side, this is a very real possibility. So what does that mean for you? You may not believe this, but you have the ability to help shape the future, the dark side or the bright side. So how can you do that? Well, I'm going to give you a number of things you can do. I've got 5 of them up here, and then I'm going to recommend one really big one. First thing is to learn. You need to understand what these models and what these tools are capable of and what their limitations are. You're making a good start by being here today and learning a little bit about some of the ethical limitations or potentials of it. And when you're learning about this, really maintain a focus on the ethics. Don't just go crazy and think, oh, what are all the crazy things we can do with this? Think about, what are the ethical things we can do? And I have a really simple little rule that Pierre here helped develop. And it's first, we want to do no harm. Have you heard that? The Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. That's what you want to do with AI, do no harm. And then if you can find some way to use AI without doing harm, or you can find some way to eliminate the harm of the potential use, then focus on something that can do some good. 2 simple rules, do no harm, and then do good. So maintain a focus on that. Then advocate. There are organizations that are trying to work on responsible AI. There's legislation that's coming out. And I'm not the biggest fan of government regulation sometimes, but sometimes it's necessary, even if it's just guidelines on how to do this right. You have the ability to advocate. You can vote for people, you can help people get elected, you can let your voice be heard, all of that, you hear that all the time, but it's actually true, especially at the local level. So try to advocate for this. And then something I'm going to really focus on is when you're deciding how to use AI, make ethical decisions. And I'm going to talk a lot about that here in just a minute. And then one that's maybe the least obvious of all of these is cultivate the things that make us human. Do you know how empathetic generative AI is? Not at all. It can kind of act empathetic, but it isn't. It doesn't really understand emotion. Emotion is just a bunch of words that it tries to predict. That's all it is. It's not really creative. It can seem that way, but it's not really creative. It can't really get excited about things. It just seems that way. You can do all of those things. So you need to cultivate those uniquely human traits in yourself and help others cultivate those as well. How many of you are polite to ChatGPT? I always say please, and I always say thank you. You know why? 3 reasons. One, it's kind of out of habit. You know, I was raised in the South, and it was please, thank you. The other is, even though she's gone now, I'm still afraid of my mother getting on me if I'm not polite. You know what the real reason is? When the AI overlords take over, they're going to say he was one of the good ones. All right? It's Pascal's wager. I'm just hedging my bets a little bit. We'll see what happens. There's actually a real reason I don't have time to get into today, but if you thank it, it helps you use it in more useful ways. Do more co-production with it than if you just treat it as some kind of an assistant you're pushing around. Okay, here's the big message to all of you. So all of this other stuff is great, and it's all good background, and it's all important. But this is what's really important. Be ethical in your own use. If you're not ethical in your use, and you start complaining about others not being ethical in their use, I don't want to hear it, right? I don't want to hear it. If you cheat with AI, and then somebody uses AI to get you to give up your PIN number for your debit card, you know, you're part of the problem. Don't do it. Don't do it. So be ethical in your own use. So I could present some very detailed ethical frameworks and all of this kind of thing, but you'd forget. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 questions to ask when you're thinking about your own uses of AI. Just 4 questions, not that much to remember. Would you be happy if the study guide I just gave you 4 questions? Would you be happy? You'd be happy. Have you ever seen my study guides? I'm going to have to go down to like a 6-point font to get them on 4 pages soon, but 4 questions. You can remember this. The first question is, am I working with generative AI, or is generative AI doing the work for me? The best way to use this is to co-produce with AI. Now, you know, there's some things that, you know, you just wanted to get it to do really quickly and it's fine. But generally speaking, you want to be working with AI, not have AI just working in your direction. And a big reason for this, and I want you to hear this, if you don't hear anything else, you need to take the long-term view of your learning. One of the things that I learned, took me a while to learn it, I was probably 30 when I finally figured it out, is delayed gratification is a wonderful thing. If you can just put off some things, you don't have to buy that new car. I almost pulled the trigger on a new phone last week, decided no, I don't need it just yet. If you can delay a little gratification, that's a wonderful thing. But going along with that is this idea that learning is work. I mean, I'm going to go back to grading, and I swear I don't hate it that much. So in my class, there are probably 20 graded elements. I have 89 students. You can do the math. I can't do the math. It's too late in the day for me to do that math, but it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that has to get graded. This term, fortunately, I'm able to get a GA to help with that, but even when I don't have a GA. I have a lot of graded stuff. Do you think I do that because I enjoy grading? We've already established I don't. Do you think I do that because I hate myself? Trust me, I do not hate myself. So why do I do that? It's because I genuinely believe that it helps you learn. Learning is work. If you don't do the work, you won't learn. And if you get generative AI to do the work of learning for you, you're not going to learn, and at some point, you're going to be pretty sorry about that. You know, I've got some friends that kind of cheated their way through school, and they are not doing so well now. So take the long-term view. A little bit of investment now can pay huge dividends in the future. And then, do you feel good about what you're doing? Now, I'm a pretty big advocate of using logic, using reason to figure things out, but you should never discount that gut feel, that little voice inside of you. If y'all ever read Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson or Thoreau, there's this whole movement called the American Transcendentalists, and one of the things they believed is that intuition is a higher form of reason. A higher form of reason. And I think to some extent they're right. So if you're going through and, you know, it just doesn't feel right, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm guessing you're all good people. We have really good students here at Tech and in the area. I'm guessing you're all good people. If that voice tells you don't do it, don't do it. And then finally, ask yourself, am I harming myself or others with this use of AI? If you're cheating with AI, I know this sounds trite, but you actually are hurting yourself. Not only in your learning, but every time you cheat, you make yourself a little bit lesser of a person. I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. Every time you cheat, you degrade your humanity just a little bit. And it becomes easier to cheat the next time, which degrades your humanity a little bit, and you end up in this downward spiral, and you end up not being a very good person. And who wants to be a lousy person? I don't know anybody that does. But you also are taking unfair advantage. You're putting yourself ahead of others through cheating. It's kind of like cutting off the corner of a race. Can you do that? Yeah, you might win, but what have you done? All you've done is cheated. And so ask yourself, if I use AI in this way, am I hurting myself? Am I hurting others? All right. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take some questions, but before I do that, this is my newsletter. Feel free to subscribe. It's really directed at higher education professionals, faculty, and staff, but there's plenty in there for students, for people in other levels of education. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and you're welcome to subscribe if you would like to. I just really wanted to show off I knew how to do QR codes. That's the real reason I had it. Have you ever seen the QR codes on the back of a truck going down the interstate? That's not a good idea. Sir?
Not a question, but a comment. It occurs to me to point out that when you cheat with the agent, you're training the agent, and you're training the agent in an unethical procedure, which is going to impact how the agent interacts with you in the future.
That's exactly right.
Every experience you have with the agent is a training exercise.
Yep. Yep, that's right. And so one of the reasons that nerfing was such a problem is because a bunch of knuckleheads did stuff that they shouldn't have done, which hurt all of us. Okay, great. Other comments, questions? God, it is just like my 8 o'clock class. Nobody has a question? Oh, yes, sir. Dr. Henderson.
Are there similarities and distinctions between the evolution of generative AI and the emergence of scientific calculators like in the 70s?
Yeah, there are. So a little bit of old man trivia. I was the very first engineering class at the University of Central Florida, which was FTU, Florida Technological University back then, that didn't have to learn how to use the slide rule. You ever seen a slide rule? Look it up. Maybe your grandpa had one. I don't know, or your grandma had one. So I think yes, to that extent, yes. So there was a lot of debate at all levels of education about whether or not students should be allowed to use calculators. And if so, how should they be allowed to use them? Which seems kind of silly today, but it was a huge deal. And I think we made some good decisions, we made some bad decisions. So it's similar in that way, but where it's different is a calculator calculated. That's it. A calculator calculated. These generative AI tools can do almost anything you can imagine. And like I said at the beginning, if you can imagine it, it'll do it at some point. And so it becomes that much more important to learn, for us to make good decisions and figure out how to do this right. So yeah, absolutely. There are some parallels, but there are some huge differences as well. Yes, sir.
What's your stance on the agent as co-producer, teammate, and property rights?
So the issue of property rights is one that we're still trying to figure out. Right now, the general thinking is if you create something with an AI tool, that is yours. But I'm not so sure that's universal, and I'm not sure it's going to stay that way. So I don't have a really good answer for that. I mean, I would consider it mine. And actually, I'd be kind of flattered if somebody wanted to steal it from me or if they wanted to use it. But I think that's a question we're going to have to deal with. Yes, sir.
I have a question, actually, similar, very
Sure.
related to that. What are your thoughts on how we might ethically source our corpus of training data to increase or maintain equity and transparency? Because, you use AI images as PowerPoint that was trained off of actual humans who
Right.
probably didn't get paid for it.
Right. No, this is another huge issue that I wish I had if I had a good answer for that, I'd be out doing consulting work at about $500 an hour. I'd be here, I'd still be here, but then after this, I'd be flying to New York or LA. I don't know. So what he's talking about is that right now there's a big lawsuit going on between a number of media companies and OpenAI because OpenAI went out and grabbed all of this information that these media companies created. And there are lawsuits with artists as well, filmmakers. That was a big part of what the recent strike was about with the entertainment industry. And then you use it to maybe create things that put the people that created the original things out of work. And I think that's a huge problem. And I really don't know how to navigate it because if you don't have that corpus, you don't have that underlying training data, you can't get to where we need to be. So I think we're going to have could we, lead to more organized labor as a possibility. It could lead to more restrictions. Like originally when OpenAI released ChatGPT, I think it went up to 2020 or 2021 for the training data. So a lot of content is embargoed. So, for the first 2 years, you got to pay to get it, and then after that, it's free. A lot of other creative works go into the public domain after 70 years? I can't remember exactly what it is. It's quite a long time. So that's an issue that we haven't figured out yet, just to be blunt. So, any other questions I can't answer?
Hopefully, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for asking this, but I'll probably be hitting the instructor role soon, right?
God, we hope so.
Fingers crossed. We got the comps thing to get through first. Right? I see that as a pretty cool opportunity, right, to kind of get out ahead because I see that students are going to use it or not, and those who are using it. So basically, before we get to the point of there being kind of, I guess another way, how can what would some best practices look like, or hey, here are some kind of within the lanes kind of safe
Good.
uses of AI and so forth.
So the first bit of advice would be to follow all of the things that I put up there earlier, especially earlier in your career as you're trying to learn and all of that. You need to be ethical in your own use. So I have had ChatGPT check exams for me. I just gave a midterm. I kind of panicked. I realized I was going to be at a conference on the day I would normally copy the exams. I thought, I've got to have this ready in the morning. And the exam was made up, and I was pretty sure it was right, but I wanted to check and make sure there were no duplicate questions, no questions that are unclear. So I ran it through. I used Claude, which is another generative AI agent, and said, check this exam for me. Let me know if anything's unclear. Let me know if any questions are duplicated. And it did. And it turns out I changed absolutely nothing because what it thought was unclear in the context of the class was clear. Where it thought I might be duplicating, I was getting at different ideas that were really similar to each other. And then I did something that, because that turned out well, I mentioned I have pretty extensive study guides. I uploaded the study guide and I said, I want you to flag any questions where the concept in that question is not in the study guide. The questions aren't on the study guide. But if, it didn't say what are large language models on the study guide, then there better not be a large language model question on the exam. I think that's totally ethical. Totally ethical. I'm not so sure if I would ask it to create exams for me and then just give those exams out. I might ask it to create some questions and then vet those questions, what we call the human in the loop. So that's a big piece of it. I think this is such an evolving area that really what you want to do is focus on those limitations and the potentials and the ethical issues that we've talked about. But I want to warn you about something. We're not going to be talking about ChatGPT so much in a couple of years. Right, that's not the future of generative AI. The future of generative AI is really twofold. One is going to be in embedded AI. So I have a couple of podcasts, and what a cliche, I started a podcast during COVID. Right? And I've got an AI tool where I upload the audio, it creates the transcript for me, it suggests some titles, it gives me a bunch of social media posts and all of that. I don't do any chatting with it. I just input it, boom, done. So you want to learn how to use the chatbots because they're important, but keep your eye on these embedded tools, where the publisher might have a test generator, that kind of thing. The other thing that's going to happen, this is a little bit out there, is we've got these AI agents, which kind of do one thing. For example, you might have an agent that scans your emails and says, here are the emails you need to respond to today, and here's the order of priority, which if you get a lot of emails, that could be a godsend. So that's all it does. You don't chat with it. You might set some parameters early on, and it'll learn over time. But then that little AI agent also helps you summarize all of those emails. Here are the main points. Kind of the TLDR, the too long didn't read version. And the email agent also talks to your calendar agent that says, okay, you need to put these things on your calendar. And your calendar agent works with your workout agent that says, here's how you can do your workout today. You've only got these blocks of time. Here's what I suggest you do. And that one talks to your nutrition agent, and on and on and on and on and on. That's where all of this is going. So really understanding how you can combine these things together is where the gold is. And so that's what I'd really be paying a lot of attention to. And that's going to happen. It's already starting to happen, but it's going to really accelerate over the next couple of years.
And I think that supports your argument about autonomy.
Yeah.
Increasing autonomy over time.
Right. If we get to direct these agents, here are the agents I want working for me. I mean, imagine if you had a bunch of agents that could organize your trips. Back when I was a dean, I was once on 30 airplanes in 30 days. If you can just, my assistant was wonderful. She knew all of my little weird, preferences and that sort of thing. She even knew what seats I wanted on which different types of aircraft. But all of that's achievable with AI agents. So anybody can have that. Wouldn't have as nice a person, she wouldn't be as much fun to be around, but in terms of these tasks, it could work. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Should I be concerned about security? And one reason I use WhatsApp is the fact that it says it's encrypted end-to-end. Now WhatsApp has included WhatsApp AI that I can ask questions and then it answers these questions. Is it going through my stuff and finding those things that are supposed to be encrypted?
Yes. That's the way I would bet. Because I'm not sure I can work otherwise. It may be able to sandbox that so it doesn't go outside of your use, but I'm not sure I'd trust that. I assume that anything I put into AI, it's going to remember and it's going to use. That's my assumption. If you have ChatGPT Teams, there's a little button you can say, don't use my data for training, but I'm not even sure I trust that. So I would assume if you put it into a chatbot, unless you're running the model, you can run these models locally. It's really hard to do. It's really expensive. I would assume that it's going to be used for training. That's why you don't ever put personally identifying information in, right? Don't do it. It's kind of the old saying, if you wouldn't put it on the back of a postcard, don't put it into AI.
Craig,
I'm getting the
one
sign.
more point I wanted to make, and many of you don't know this, but we've been developing and have passed a generative AI framework for the College of Business in terms of use, where it's appropriate to use, where it's not appropriate to use.
This kind of gets at Dr. Henderson's comment about calculators. In certain classes, we allow calculators, or we allow computers, in other classes we don't, for a variety of reasons. Can you talk about that framework of policies a little bit and how that fits into this?
Sure, sure. So when we were talking about what to do with AI, there were a lot of universities that came out with like bans on AI use and really strict policies. Almost every one of them had to back off. So what we did is we sat down and said, okay, it makes no sense to have a blanket policy. So if you're trying to learn arithmetic, you probably shouldn't be using a calculator when you're first starting out. When you're in calculus, maybe it's fine. And so what we did is we came up with a number of required elements that faculty have to have policies around, but the faculty get to decide where they want their policy to fall. And when we created the framework, we had we call the maximally restrictive, the maximally permissive, I'm not sure exactly what we called it, and then kind of the in-between, and gave some examples. And so faculty can say, okay, in this one I want to really restrict use, but in this aspect of it, I really want students to use it. Like I am fine with my students using generative AI. Matter of fact, we use it. We have labs on AI. I even have questions where it says, here's what AI comes up with. Or where I ask them to put it into AI. And then they've got to tell me kind of where the AI matches the book, where it's different from what we've talked about in class, that sort of thing. Because I think we need to, my personal opinion is we need to teach you how to use these tools. But that might not be the way everybody feels, and it might not be appropriate for maybe Dr. Blackstock's class. Although I'm guessing a lot of it is, I don't know. But there could be classes where, nope, you need to really think through this and put it in your own words, and I want you to do the work of thinking through it, not get AI to help you. And so that's the basic idea, and I think it's rolling out in the fall, right? Fall classes.
Policy is that you have to have a policy.
That's right, that's all it is.
Give you guidance.
Yeah, and I think that's critically important because the worst thing we can do is leave you all in the dark about this. That's just not fair. That's not fair. That leads to really good students being afraid to use AI and really bad students having no fear, right? And that's the worst of all possible worlds as far as that goes.
Greg, thank you very much.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here. I hope you learned a lot.